It's Jay. Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Simulation Radio program. I'm your host, WHITEKILLER. Glad you could be with us here today. Today is Tuesday, September the 15th. And today we look forward to enjoying the good weather, the good times that we're going to have today, making things great again. I just wanted to give a little bit of information about today's program. Today's program will be an interview we did with a young man who is in the area. He's tribal in the sense that he comes from an indigenous nation. He is a world-renowned photographer with National Geographic magazine, and happens to be in the reservation area doing a story and taking pictures through pictures of our tribal leaders. Yesterday we had an opportunity to spend some time with him, and just wanted to share a little bit of his infectious laugh with you, his passion and his commitment to issues of sovereignty, and KILIII YUYAN. And we now consider him a brother, so just wanted you guys to be a part of what he is all about and having an experience with him. And I'll tell you what, when you do hear his laugh, it really just endears him to you. And I just want to say thank you, brother, for being a part of our community, and you're welcome here anytime. So that'll be the crux of our show today. I do want to put out a couple of information posts regarding some things that are going on within the community. Today, Tuesday, we do have some deaths we'd like to announce as far as the information flow on them, but we do know that tribal members Verbena McMath of Rapid City, South Dakota passed and had her service recently. We'd like to honor her, along with Carol Votaw of the community here in Seminole County. Her service will be held on September 15th. It will be a private for family and close friends at the Swearingen Funeral Home with Houston Tiger and Jason Tiger officiating. But tonight, or I should say today, from 8 to 1, there'll be a viewing at the Swearingen Funeral Home here in Seminole. Carol's burial will follow the service on the 15th at Wolf Cemetery. An announcement from the tribal complex. As most of you are aware, we are renovating our tribal headquarters building to allow for improved sanitizing capabilities in response to COVID-19. As a result, today the complex will be closed, so contractors will have full access, and employees currently working will not be subject to the noise and dust. So the complex will be closed, and then we will reopen the building for employees to return on Friday, September 18th. Please, if you have any information, feel free to contact the communications office here at 405-382-1010. Again, the complex will be closed from today till Thursday and reopen again on Friday. The Technology Assistance Program applications are still being accepted. Please utilize either one of the drop box at the complex or mail them in. There seems to be some concern or question about how to get them to the complex. I would just mail it in or utilize the drop box that's at the complex that you used for the COVID-19 emergency assistance application. So just as long as it gets there, and it will get there. I do know that the applications for the emergency assistance have been completed, so they're in the process of getting them all mailed out. If you have any question about those applications, you may have been sent by email. If you did not receive a do not respond email, that means you have been kicked back. That you have been accepted and not kicked back. But other than that, everything that you sent in will more than likely be put in a check form. So just be patient. We still got a little bit more ways to go in getting those mailed out. With that, let's go on to our interview with Mr. KILIII YUYAN of National Geographic Magazine. And once we are finished with that interview, we'll just close it out and say goodbye. Hadam Charles, and we'll talk to you later. Be kind to one another. Tell us a little bit about yourself, KILIII. Tell us a little bit about where you came from and the correct pronunciation of your name and your background.
Well, sure. So my name is KILIII YUYAN. The first name is easy to say, hard to spell. The last name is much easier to spell, but hard to say. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, I'm from the Nai Khatska Nation. So that we're one language group and a group of people that basically got split in half by the changing border of Russia and China. So, but we're all still considered Siberia native. And so Siberia is kind of it's this enormous area. Siberia is big enough for the United States to fit into, including Alaska, and then 1/3 more. So by itself, it's the largest country in the world. Mm-hmm. But it also, so Siberia includes the eastern half of Russia as well as the northeastern part of China. So that whole region is, and then we have a lot of different indigenous peoples. A lot of land, not a whole ton of people. But it's important resource-wise, so the Chinese and the Russians have just done the same things that colonial people do everywhere, and just stomped on us. So my family was forced to flee our homeland. My grandparents especially, the grandparents' generation was forced to flee during the Communist Revolution. And so my parents had to endure all of that, and then I eventually came over here. They eventually moved to the U.S. and I was born here. But I lived over with my grandma back in the homeland for the first few years of my life, so I still remember some of that. No, I don't have good memories of it, but I remember smells and tastes, which is really cool. Every once in a while, there's something that I taste, mostly in the north, like whale blubber or something. I'll taste that, and I'm like, oh my god, it brings me back. It's just really cool. Yeah. And now, as a result, I think because I've been pulled away from my ancestral homeland, I'm so interested in it. I've got to be super interested in it. I always wanted to know more about what it means to be indigenous, and especially to be close to the land, because I think I just spent so much of my childhood just playing outside and being interested in bugs and all that stuff, smearing fireflies on my brother, stuff like that. Yeah. And so I spent a lot of my early years trying to learn how to hunt, trying to learn how to fish, and then eventually moving around to different indigenous communities and just spending time with people and learning stuff, what does it mean? I remember being really surprised right from the very beginning about how different it was in my head versus what the reality of what indigenous peoples are, and then eventually coming full circle around to realize, oh, my life is very indigenous. The fact that my family was chased out of our homeland, I had to hide our identity and all of that. That's like the story of everybody. It happened at different times but that's just a really common story.
And picking up what brought you here, your photography skills, how have you incorporated your sight and your insight of being indigenous into your photography?
Well, I think in a lot of ways being indigenous has given me the ability to make my photography something into much more powerful. I think when you are a photographer and you are very technically skilled, but you have nothing to say, the work that you do is just it's just not that important. It lacks gravity. It lacks any kind of weight to it. And I think if you have something important to say, but you don't have technical skill, it still comes through. You know, that the heart of it will still comes through, and so the technical skill is not that difficult to learn either. You just you have to absorb it over time.
Yeah.
And so I think it gives people a really huge leg up when you have a unique experience in this world, or the way that you personally grew up, and the more struggles that you've had in a way makes you more unique. Means that you've seen the world differently than many people, and as a result gives you a unique vision that the rest of the world benefits from. You know, when you're able to.
I'll put in a plug for you at KILIII.com. You'll see some of his work and what he's done before. And I must say there was one in there, and he was talking about the technical aspect of it. There was one photograph when he was in Navajo Nation. There was two young girls. It was a emotion. It was captured emotion, them in motion. Technically, you would say, "Wow, this is a blurred out picture," but when I saw it, I was like captured by it, because what you were saying in that and what was being said in that was it really touched me. I mean, that was carefree, you know.
Yeah, and that was very much the reality, you know. That it was so carefree, but also for those two women, running was one of the most spiritual and one of the most deep connections they had to being Navajo, to being Tsno.
Absolutely.
They really loved it, and running in that Canyon de Chelly, for them was just like this, like just something they just had to do. They felt it was so important, and I was just like, well, taking a picture of two people running in a canyon is maybe interesting, but mostly kind of boring. Right? Like we're just inundated with images, and it lacks the spiritual quality to it, because it's just a straight representation of what we see. But the camera has the ability to elevate, to like we're able to move that to make it art a little bit.
It was beautiful. It was
thank
picture,
you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you appreciate it.
Was you running along with them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What brings you here to Seminole County? I just want to throw that out there a little bit.
Oh yeah, well, I'm here working on a story for National Geographic magazine on sovereignty of Native nations. It's huge. It's a huge story, but also it's just an enormous thing, because no major publication has done a significant story on sovereignty in mainstream media, and so I think it's just going to open a huge number of eyes about what it means to the fact that sovereignty is a thing that Native nations have, are nations that the United States has treaties with, and that Seminole Nation governs itself and aids its own citizens. I mean, it's just like mind blowing for non-Native peoples. Like, I've found while working on this story that everywhere I go, when I talk to someone who is Indigenous, they know what sovereignty is the moment I say it. Sovereignty, oh, I get it. I know what that word is, unless they're pretty young. But generally, everyone knows. But pretty much every non-Native has no idea what that word means. What is the word sovereignty? And it's just amazing, because it's so important to us, and it's so not important to non-Native peoples. That is what privilege is.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. To not have to know what that means. And here at the Seminole Nation in particular, and in Oklahoma, because the tribes here are at the forefront of sovereignty in the United States. So the recent Supreme Court case, the McGirt decision, basically just reestablished the fact that nations here are sovereign over their lands, including land, especially, well, it gets a little technical for sure, but it's a huge sovereignty case, and it was really important, and it was made possible because the tribes here fought really hard for it, And so it's really cool to be here and to see not only the differences between the 5 tribes and how everyone's like working towards caring for their own people, but also just to see like this kind of like role model for how possible it is to have a beautiful community. To like have a nation. I kind of look at it like looking around at America right now, and it's just like, oh, shaking my head. So we just don't take care of people. If people fall through the cracks, we're like, oh, sorry. Just could you get out of the way? I don't want to stand on your head. But whereas, I see here, the money that the nation makes goes towards healthcare, and it goes towards elder housing and all this stuff that is just like awesome. It's so cool. And it's just so old, this is just not a new principle by any means. And so I just think it's amazing, and being able here to see stuff like stickball and see these ancient lineages continuing that had to be hidden for so long because they were outlawed. Like seeing these out in the open again, it just makes me so happy. Yeah.
What, with all your travels like this with the elders, what have you seen? What kind of commonalities have you seen as far as them engaging with the youth and how we go forward in this world? What are some commonalities you've seen? Some of the I don't want to say trends, but some of the influences that they want to embark on the youth.
Well, I think one thing that's definitely happening around. Around the world really is that you're seeing like language programs, and those are being really successful. So in a lot of places, youth are learning their language, and a lot of times they're able to speak it better than their parents are. So this is kind of generational gap. So that is really great, and that is definitely because the elders put that into place, and they're like, we were forced not to have this because of boarding schools and residential schools. Right. We want to make sure our kids have that opportunity to do that, and also to guide them to do that. But I think also that they're also seeing that as the world is changing around, that all of the forces of capitalism and American culture, Canadian culture, are kind of like move you away from traditional practices. They want you to be more individualistic, care less about your family. They want you to be indoors and be away from the land. And elders, not just elders, but leaders in the community, they see it, and they're like, oh no, we have to fight these forces, because without those forces, of course, the kids would just naturally be doing what their parents are doing, doing what their grandparents have doing. But then, so they're putting in place all these programs to try to engage youth and make sure that not only are they able to carry on culture, but that that the kids can still find a way to make it work in the world today. So it's not just like, oh, we're not turning back the clock, but it's this new thing. This is hybrid.
What are some of the commonalities with the kids? Kids we always hear are basically the same around the world. I know in a lot of the travels I've seen, some of the similarities are very similar to the way we have here. But what are some things that you see with the makeup of our youth in some of your travels?
Well, I think one of the greatest things is that kids pretty much, they started as these wonderful kind of blank slates, and it's just so like, when you get to be like, when you're 6 to 9, they're just full of joy. It's just like pure carefree joy. And culture is creeping in there, and influences from everywhere are creeping in there. But for the most part, kids are kids everywhere, and they're just great. They're just out playing and messing with each other and just doing that. And I still see that. So that every time I see that, that just gives me wonderful hope. And I think, especially on reservations or in like more rural areas, kids are just out playing all the time still. So that in cities and much of mainstream America, there's not kids playing out on the street anymore. You don't see kids riding bikes anymore. So that is really a great thing that I still see happening. But I think also youth, there's just this allure of the way to make money under capitalism, under it's the American way, and people see, oh, this is how so and so is making money over there. This is how white people are making money, and look at how prosperous they are, and how well they're doing. And I think that a lot of the youth don't have the experience to see. They see what's good. They're like, oh, I want that. I want that. They got nice pickups. And they aren't seeing, oh, their family. That family is messed up as a result of that way of living. Thinking about myself, and I think with a lot of times it's the elders who've been around for long enough, and they can see the manipulations of the colonial world that the youth can't see these invisible threads, you know, and so that's why it should be this guided.
I'm gonna step out of line here. Social media kind of being a purveyor of a lot of this.
Definitely.
You know, social media being a purveyor of a lot of this. I mean, it can be used for good. It can be used for opening a world that we're not familiar with, or we are familiar with, but we just don't know how to manage it.
Yep.
It all comes down to manageability.
Yep.
Yeah, and I like what you said. It's an American way of thought.
It is. It is. I don't even think I think that the majority of the world, even like outside of America, isn't even like that. You know, America is a very special kind of strange.
Well, you have an insight into that, having been around the world.
Yeah.
And it does. I know, as with my travels, America takes a lot for granted.
It does.
It takes a lot for granted, but I think when you do have a chance to get outside and look outside, you see the bigger picture. You know.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Traveling around, I think, I'm sure you see this as well, but there's just so many things that bond us as human beings, you know, like there's the us and there's the them, and there's just so many things that we all feel, and, you know, we all feel pain, we all feel joy, you know, and those things really bind us, and you see so many commonalities. But it's so easy for us to just get caught up on the superficial differences, you know. It gets to be very, us versus them, which is such a bummer.
Well, I'll tell you, your happiness is infectious, and I'm gonna definitely throw this plug out there too. And again, Charles Mann is the writer that's gonna be collaborating with you on this periodical with National Geographic story. It should be published sometime next year, late, and I just want to say thank you for coming and being a part of the Seminole Nation. You always have a home here.
Thanks, Bo. Yeah, it's super great. Thank you for the welcome.
You bet.
Bye, Nella.
Well, that's